you. Right. It's cool to see like the inspiration that from the yeah. Oh, you're good.
So I would say, you know, we had some art. We've seen some art being made, and more art being made. The art of painting has always like just amazed me with a two-dimensional surface, what can happen from it. And there's a lot of fun to be had. Mr. Honeybee Frank is from what I understand, a self-taught artist who has a lot of interesting work up. If you go to Lark Song in Bethany, which I highly recommend doing, on the second Thursday of the month, there's slam poetry. Yeah, yeah, you're totally fine. Um, there's slam poetry, free and open to the public. On the third Thursday, they have authors in conversation, and on both of those occasions, you will see an awesome banana at Larksong, and we are in the presence of the artist. So I don't know if it's what you know a little bit of a reference to Warhol or if it's totally just of your own. Uh, but it's awesome anyway. And thank you for being here. Thank you for painting and tell us more.
Well, fruit specifically is a very, um, I think, very crucial way to like engage and play with like painting itself. One, because the idea of a fruit kind of carries pretty easily, you know, you can make like, as long as like generally your brain understands the colors and shapes, as such. You understand that it's a fruit, so I think it's a easy way to keep the pressure on yourself. With that, I will be planting a fruit today, so I'd like to ask the audience for fruit.
How about a, I don't know what they're called.
I think coconuts are
What's
cool.
steep, that's supposedly really steep, but they're not actually that bad.
Don't mean the durian.
Yeah.
A
The durian?
durian,
Yeah.
but I need someone to spell that.
Durian.
Maybe 2 R's.
Yeah, maybe 2 R's.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I'm painting the durian. Why everything?
I don't know, I was trying to think of the most obscure fruit I'd ever had.
How did it taste?
It wasn't, well, I don't know, because I like knowing other cultures, it's like a symbol of sneakiness, but it wasn't that bad. It was just kind of like, I feel like it was kind of similar to jackfruit, which I know lots of people haven't had, but it was okay. Just a big spiky thing.
Where did you have it?
One of my friends got it from like the Asian market or something
Is that here in Lincoln?
in Lincoln, yeah.
Has anyone else ever had a durian fruit?
Have we had it?
Yeah.
I think I've had the jackfruit.
Yeah, it's sort of similar to jackfruit. I'd say it's more flavorful than jackfruit, so, but yeah, it's similar vibes. It's also a big spiky thing. They have to put a net around the tree so it doesn't kill people when they fall off because they're so big and spiky.
So with that, I think I want to take you through the process in which I like to engage with player. It's supposed to be very free form, and I'll do my best to externalize the thoughts that happen during it, but this is my first time doing so live. Like in the process, you know, the thoughts run, but sometimes the brain goes faster than the path. So we can see reference here generally. Would someone like to give me a color? Just the color to start with.
Yeah. Cheers.
Orange. Okay, excellent. Why orange?
I've always associated that color with like play and passion, I suppose.
You said you've always associated. When was the first time you remember associating that color with play or passion?
My first word was ball, and it was when I was like 2 years old, and I just took the orange out of the front and threw it down, and was like, oh.
Oh. Have you ever done that since?
What is it?
Have you ever done that since?
Oh, all the time, but usually from behind me.
Throw it out.
Oh, yeah.
Is it still as satisfying?
Oh, that's great. Yeah, especially when security shows up.
Oh. You know, except all, last thing I was expecting was the orange. I was thinking basketball, but like orange. It's a nice diversity. Direction. So with this, I'm like, okay, orange. I find that colors themselves, while important, I think fall second to value. I think when you can convey value correctly, then you can be allowed to play with what color you choose so much more freely. So here, I'm going to choose orange as the background, and because of the nature of the outside during the fruit, I'm pushing the background to a lighter coverage, or we can have kind of contrast with the actual shell of the fruit. Someone give me another number. Say,
Purple.
purple. Alright. One thing I also want to do with painting, and something that I find it is where pushing them both the brain visually it is contrast. So whenever I have a chance to kind of pull contrast between two colors, I'm like, why not? And that to me is, I think, the essence of play. It's like exploration, it's curiosity, it's questioning, but without the kind of restrictive frameworks and conditionings we tend to put ourselves into. I feel like very early on we're taught to stop asking questions. Once you start asking questions, you know, all the whys, all of the it's gonna be things on canvas here because sometimes I don't want to think I'm here and I'm a little bit lazy, or not even lazy, I want to be like quicker. So I'm just gonna. And right now we're still in the like forming phase of this. Nothing has to come close to like what the shape is. We're just filling in the canvas because we want to like convey. I think I would think that the color we're feeling emote. The colors and images always come first. The meaning can come later. You know, but like let yourself flow through the process of it, and just sort of feel the colors. We felt orange. Now purple got into the mix. We're just gonna see how those colors feel. And we do it. Does anyone here paint? I do. What kind of paint? Acrylics. Oh, sick. How long have you been painting? 15 years. All right, so everyone, we have a new speaker joining us. What's your favorite thing about painting with acrylics?
They get very versatile. You can add various things to them, which are called mediums, make them do be more glossy or matte, or pouring mediums before the canvas.
Do you have a favorite thing that you paint? Like, do you have either subject matter specifically, or theme, or style? I don't know.
Well, I know abstract ones. Then the circular shapes. Like in the center of the like say basically make with the various colors with in the circle, and then on the outside might either be just a solid color such as black, or I may also extend it in the circle around the outside. I mean outside the circle. Like say if so it makes sense to me like outside honestly I see on the black part on the outside we'll say if I use black, but then the inside might be white, and the colors you know very start with white, say then various colors on the white, and then the outer part of the painting might have a more subdued look, or also can have, because if you use some things like iridescent, some iridescent effects, and they can show up on the black part.
Do you find that the way you paint influences the way you view the world? Like, in a look, honestly, in a literal thing, like, when you look at things in the world, do you see the shapes that you paint? Like, do you see, or do you see the shapes that like, do you see shapes to paint? Do you see shapes that like speak to you in a way that body can develop them, put into one of the pieces?
I mean, talk about method. No, as far as that goes, but as far as some abstract, I'm not sure, but I mean, well, sometimes like some might be less like a plan with some of those type of ones I do. Otherwise, I've done some more semi-realistic ones that are such as that might be like a ocean seascape. Silence. For sunset or even that.
I'm curious. There's a discussion group if anyone's interested on Sundays at 1 at Telegraph Mill. I call it the Hope Sharing Circle. And Craig brought to my attention a book. Was it Art and on the Brain, or I forget the
Your brain on art.
Your Brain on Art. Yeah. So like the things that may or may not go into your art are went into my brain, and I thank you very much for that, and sort of maybe taking me a little deeper in the appreciation of art. That's something that I've been grateful for. Thank you for that. And
To me, that book has a lot of different things, you know, it covers such as writing and you know, let's say writing to be therapeutic, you know, for the psychologically
yeah,
and, no, it means anyone more community, community get together with something like that. I think that's maybe the major part of the book. But, anyway, there's a variety of things in books. So it's free. So good. So yes, I make them.
Okay.
Check out your brain on art.
yeah. So I like maybe for the both of you, do books ever sort of enter into that space from which art gets made, or is it this is interesting over here and then here's the making of art over here? Or
Everything I'll go after the ideas. Yes. So in short, yes. In all, yes, and I think when an idea paints or when an idea strikes a visual or a feeling, oftentimes it's hard to describe in a way that makes sense, but most recent book I read was the Left-Handed Darkness by and
You say, see, they said left-handed darkness.
yeah, and I think the ideas of how that book played with the ideas of gender, I can trace through the pieces that I've done, and it's clearly like the assumptions I think of gender, the assumptions of how people were around the world based on like someone else's perception or bias. So yes, in short, very much yes. Books movies, video games, music. I think all of that ties into um, like cool or like stupid ideas. You know, sometimes it marinates and makes it better. Sometimes it marinates to like melts away. Other times it will change it by change its flavor for something entirely.
You mentioned like value, like if you can grasp the value, then it's like it makes more freedom in the color. And just that notion itself of like value, that did that just emerge naturally, or was that something like in your development as an artist that was like uh I don't know, maybe like that, was that mentored to you, or like how did that coming to put the value first happen, I guess?
Came with playing with colors. That came with at first using the colors and the way that like yeah, like simplify. Like if something is yellow, then like only okay yellow and then white with black. Actually, something that helped a lot with that was a rule for myself, and that after recognizing I was using black as like this crutch to shade, I'm like, okay, we're gonna shade without black, and that I think was the beginning of an exploration of value, because in that I would find like, you know, these shadows, these highlights actually more to the values of the graphic, the less the colors necessarily have to be right as we think of them. Like sometimes it's kind of as a point, I also love the idea of like underpainting, bleeding through the overpainting to create not only the texture but also like this even more nuanced palette. So I've taken to gosh, sorry, hopping back at the value train. For those, with that, it's play, experimentation. You try colors, you see what looks good, what doesn't look good. And one of the things I love about film specifically as a medium is that something that looks good, you don't have to wait very long to cover it up. You can just wait 10 minutes, change entirely. But also use that state, which this I was like this much. This from the beginning of Kunc was inspired by Prose, Happy Years. As when I see something or I do something that I'm like, oh, actually, I don't like the way that looks. I try not to get rid of it immediately, and I try to see if I can make the painting work with it. So it's no longer about like making what exactly I see in my head that becomes part of this unity and like marriage between the application of the medium and the process itself, like the process in the play of like the experimentation now has a voice and say in the making of it. I'm gonna give me another cover. Green? Or,
Well, also, what you're kind of related to what you're talking about is maybe also alluding to like lip making layers.
Yeah.
Also, I think Karen does that as well with printing, right? In print one, then next you make another layer and add to it, right?
It affects what comes on top. You had a look of complete underpainting on this.
oh yeah.
Is that just to get things loosened up and then you put things on top?
Oh, that is actually old. That's an old. It was a practice piece from, I think, last summer. I was practicing, seeing how far I could get in 20 minutes, which the painting down from under that was as far as I could get in 20 minutes. And it was laying around. I'm like, oh, you know what? Given my recent movement, I need to enjoy the way the underpainting sort of like influence the overpainting. I figured I'd bring a canvas that already has something on it to better demonstrate that. A blank canvas, while I think easy to kind of gosh, I don't know if this is a bad way to put it, subject of will to like the blank canvas only is what we put on it, whereas canvas that already has something, you know, like obviously we put on. When you come at it with like a new vision in mind, you no longer are creating in a void. You're creating on top of like a skeleton, even if the skeleton doesn't necessarily like fit, you sort of reform it, and it lets the underpainting kind of have a say as well. So even this piece that I'm covering up, and you know, this day forward, we're no longer seeing the light of the day. It still has a memory in like what goes through, what shows. And then try and keep this at an angle where you can see it, but also at an angle where everyone can get it. Oh, so another thing that has been very focused on is contrast. And with that,
You is has everyone heard of imaginal cells? If I say imaginal cells, does anybody know?
is it imaginable?
Imaginal, yeah.
Say cells, CELLS.
Yeah. So what you were just saying with the underpainting and the overpainting, it made me think of imaginal cells. So these are in the body of a caterpillar. And when the caterpillar goes into the middle phase, the cocoon, let's say, basically most of the caterpillar dissolves and becomes kind of food and material for what will be the butterfly. One of the things that doesn't dissolve is the nervous system, or like not the entirety of the nervous system. And then the imaginal cells, they fire up in the cocoon, and the butterfly gets built from the imaginal cells that sort of are like, it's like a bigger architecture than DNA. So like this imaginal cell might grow into a wing, and this one, you know, it's like, yeah, but it kind of, for some reason, it just reminded me of that when you were talking.
So
So-
those dormant, so those are things that were dormant,
Yeah.
and then they became manifest, they become manifested.
And then when you dissect a caterpillar, it has little wing nubs under its skin that turn into wings when it's a butterfly.
That might be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said imaginable stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the first time I've ever heard of those. But based off of your description, I would say yes, that is kind of like the idea. This idea that like still keep a core of something, or like part of it, even though it appears on the surface that you're changing all of it. Yeah. Oh, also one of the reasons, like so playing and experimenting with color, this with acrylic dry spots, and with that, mixing and blending can become a little tedious if you're not like exactly sure of what to do. So through that, and the tedium of having the color match, I kind of it made me be more experimental with color, because I'm like, gosh, I can't quite get like this exact green right now because I did this yesterday and it's all dried up and I haven't given it on my palette. So, dang, how can and it also dries. I think it's when it's wet, it's a little darker. It dries like honestly, it's not all listen to but I tried to color match exactly. So, but I know when wet and dark or when wet and dry, it changes, which like makes it even more difficult because then I'm like, oh, sweet, if I color matches perfectly, and then dries, oh, dang, no, never mind. So with that, rather than like trying to restrict colors and then force like this like, oh, we would be what I do to be. I'm like, okay, you know what? If you want to be a little lighter than the last palette, yeah, I'll work with that and I'll see what we can make of it. So with that, it's like improvisation. And I think that currently is one of the most stimulating parts of painting for me. It is the improvisation of a piece where you go into it with like a very loose idea, a very loose plan. So that way, your own voice doesn't like drown out the voice of the process. I don't remember what questions like that, but I do remember Imagine Yourself and I really like that. Which
This,
oh, sorry.
oh yeah, sorry, if you had a, yeah.
I was gonna say, if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask. Whether it be, painting process or anything. Just ask me how it is.
This open question to creatives. What is creativity? What is art? What is art making? What is the art world? Any or all of that? What is a work of art? What is art making?
I think for me, I look for art to be a transformation and a translation, not a replication. So we already have that. We have the world, but that's me. I don't need to see so much representational art because I think there's a lot. But even that's an interpretation. So then my definition keeps expanding. Any kind of interpretation.
It's a translation. What do you feel like? What are you translating? How does it come in?
Yeah,
For
goes in this way and then it goes out in the body and comes out in the hands and in making and
Is-
thinking.
Is it possible to describe so like then you're translating? How does it come to you? Is it always there? Can you like always go to it, or is it like sort of like an ebb and flow of like
In ebb and flow and have different stages and although some of artists are meant to have like an overall lifetime interest that they work on. I think I do. I have this idea that I have a very hard time articulating, but I know it in my heart that it's the same question I ask, but every time I make a work of art, it's a facet of that. It's not the same exact thing and it kind of plays around in different subjects, but it's always after that same question.
what's the question? Is it
How did things come to be? So that's pretty big.
how do things come to be?
So it's like the story of the caterpillar, it's the story of geology, it's the story of mountains rising and falling. Life and that's why the history is so interesting.
I feel like I'm kind of the same way with art where I don't like spending too much time trying to make it look photorealistic because I could just take a photo of it. But it's also, I guess, a good thing to like practice on because sometimes you want to make something that doesn't exist in real life, like you could exist in real life. So it's a good skill, but I feel like you can always spend more time to make something look more realistic, and if that's what you're going for, I feel like it's like a never-ending thing, kind of.
Never interested me.
Yeah.
Because isn't the interesting thing like how we perceive it? Like that, I will say, I too, like, I say it's a bias, that one of the most technical things we can explore is the way we interpret the world, which is also why I think more of people should always be making art. Oh, please, tell us, show us how you see, show us how you feel. There's, I think something about that that helps us reconnect with empathy that we're all achieved to know our at an early age. Okay, someone came up with
But from this angle, your painting is so relating to the print back on the wall. You guys all see that?
you know what? That I will say I've spent significant time looking at all these, which the artist is fantastic. Erin, I think.
The artist is present.
Wait, Karen, you're Karen. Why I'm like, I want to paint out here. And
Yeah.
Okay, well, in that case. But I like this piece, that one, all three of those were just like, whoa, wow, okay, this is so cool. We will see like your work here in person while you're talking about it. Now it's like, of course, sweet.
But
Oh.
even those are from a long time ago.
Mhm.
That's what's interesting for me to look at them and see. Think of my work now, but it's just how arts grow. But these are the same questions. And having questions is more interesting than answers.
Has the flavor of hunches about that how something comes to be, was that the question? Has the sort of flavor of that changed? Or there's like shades that like are you getting close to being able to articulate it with words, or it just
I think it just means there's a lot of topics in that whole question that I can always address. So it might be about flowers, it might be about growth and decay. It could be about man-made and nature. And I think of all those things as related. They're kind of opposite, but they're on the same vein. Like my choice today with whoever gave us the things, I picked a rock, but it's the opposite of water. So affected by water. So those are the things that just seem magical to me when I think about them, find those connections. And I'm looking for them all the time out in the world, but I don't even have to say it so much. I just know it's an unanswerable quest.
And to piggyback, it seems like some questions don't need the answer. Some questions are just worth being asked in the first place. Because like in the seeking of the answer, like what comes of it? Like you know, to spend a lifetime not having an answer to that question, but to then have like a lifetime of like this in asking it 100%. Yep, that's it. That's all that needed to happen. You just needed to ask. That's cool.
Well, that's what allows for play and all the different aspects that you test out this way and that way. So much fun
Oh, yeah.
and hard work.
I think there's like so many answers to so many questions available too. I just like really love learning new things, and I think that I don't know, it's kind of like the more you learn, the more you don't know stuff. But I think that I don't know, like I really like biology and like animals and stuff. And so I love it when like I don't know, I guess when media that takes place on other planets or whatever has like a good understanding of that. Because sometimes aliens are just random weirdness, but other times they like really um they like really like play into like evolutionary biology. Like I know I feel like except for the novel, like in Avatar, the animals are all pretty much like that because it's like sort of similar to Earth, except for instead of all of the like vertebrates having like 4 limbs, they all have 6 limbs. So just kind of stuff like that where it's
There's a exhibit at the Sheldon in I think 2009 by June Kaneko. Uh, Works out of Omaha, and the book that I don't know what the show is called, but the book that came of it was called Plays the Thing, and it was the director at the time interviewing Mr. Kaneko and a philosopher who has thought some on art, and Arthur Danto. Um, and I think there's a one of his books is called like The Transfiguration of the Ordinary or something like that. And I believe that is a reference to a fictitious work of literature that's named in a book by Muriel Spark, uh, The Crime of Miss Jane Brodie. It's just a fictitious thing mentioned in there, but he, I guess, decided to use it for the name of his book. And he kind of he describes like an art world, or like what's the difference between like a stack of Brillo boxes and the work of art by Andy Warhol. uh, and he basically is like, well, it's intentional. It exists as part of the art world. There's a consciousness of that, and the definition that he finally comes to is like an work of art is an object that conveys meaning. And so when you said value is like the start, it was like I was just instantly my mind was on Danto. And beauty could be one of those meanings that's meant to be conveyed. But I think the way he approached it, it sort of it didn't sideline beauty or anything, but it's like I think maybe it felt like my perception is maybe beauty was seen as the essence of art at some point, and then that kind of maybe helped the dislodging of that being the central thing. I don't know.
One was the soup guy, right? So what? The guy who did all the Campbell soups.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was that was kind of like I guess when he started doing the soup camp, it was kind of I guess kind of like a statement about capitalism. But then it kind of like came full circle where then Campbell was like, hey, if you actually like use your designs on some of our cans, and then he's like, sure, I like money. And he went on with it. But it was kind of like a like
It wasn't necessarily.
but like when it started off it was kind of like, oh yeah,
Beauty, but
yeah.
it was about the awareness. Look at everything and be aware of these things. Be aware of repetition, aware of the patterning, the color intensity that happens in our commercial world. And then, yes, it just trips over into questions about that commercial world. It just leads you down that path. And the way that's what the pop art movement was about, to make us understand our world. Interpretation is there. And that you interpret, and it does make all those questions for why is that Campbell soup or Brillo boxes a valuable thing to think about.
Say, I would think that the only way to understand what can come about is by questions. You know,
Mhm.
that type of understanding of like you said, you were talking about specifically ads and the color saturation. You said Bible. Where did you see? You said we are talking about like the noticing the patterns, the repetition, and like the intensity. I think of
Yeah, the advertising colors.
yes,
And then what is it doing to us?
Yeah.
When we look at that stuff. And it has so, commercial world is so filtered into us, we can't escape it now. It's become our cultural resources, and that's good and bad. Nature is not necessarily in there. That's what's worrisome.
and I think that's part of what
Or it's all fake nature. And that's really worrisome.
Mhm.
like the gosh, it's like the overstimulation of everything. You're shown brightest of colors, the starkest of contrasts, and you're like, gosh, pardon me if I sound like seriously, and it's like it rewires your brain to sort of like what's the word? Like dopamine hit itself.
Mm.
But now it's no longer about these like this fruit that you see in the wild, or like that animal that is like that really unique color. No, it's about like a brand. It's about the product, which is why I also think playing with colors in every single way is so important, because what it does is like I see this painting creation, even playing with like the ideas that can be found in the books, that are constantly turned into ways to like milk us for money and value. All of these things that people create help rewire our brains back to like what I think closer to maybe what they're supposed to be,
Mm.
in terms of like where we honestly find our reward system leading us. A part of me believes that in order to function in this world, you not only have to be when I have nothing actually, you have to find a way to like gamify. You have to find a way to gamify it, like your own brain,
Mm.
and reward. Find ways that your brain can reward you for the things that you want to do. Whereas I think the power of ads is that we're forced into looking at taking them in so much. It's like hard not to, reframe what we perceive as like intrinsic value around that. I say this. I work in a casino and I'm surrounded by TVs, and all I see. I mean, if I've started intentionally looking at the table at stillness. Also because it's the only green I can see at this place. But the ads alone are like, pardon my French, so fucking stupid. So dumb. They're so dumb.
Oh yeah.
Like it's, oh man, it is.
Yeah.
And
Been recognizing a lot of times.
yeah, and to the point where I genuinely have no clue. Like this could have been written by AI. This could have been done by AI. All of it.
Or so literally AI.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I've seen. You said you work at casino.
Yes.
I think maybe my casino ads that are just so dumb. It'll be like everyone will have AI voice in them,
Mhm.
and be like, oh, I need this. Yeah, and then he like turns into like a superhero or something. It's like, I'm getting so much money from this casino.
Mhm.
No one makes a ton of money from casinos except the casino. It's like, okay, it's like overall, if you're the type of person who always goes to casino, you're gonna on general lose.
Well, it's the same as on like scam bills and stuff. It's deliberately extremely obvious that it's scam because it's made to a selection of people that are most vulnerable. So it's
Mhm.
That's why when you, most people will go like, oh, it's standing was so obvious and take it out, it's kind of a thing. It's not when, you know, how many people that are gonna respond to that email, maybe people that are gonna go through the whole process and not.
That probably people who don't like English. English markers and pictures.
People are suffering like some kind of cognitive thing or things like that. Whatever reason,
they don't criticize society enough, maybe, and people who, you know, what we're doing is the critical thinking that is getting a bad name. And critical thinking is actually really important. Everybody needs it. Well, you have to look at your world and ask questions. But a lot of people don't. Just accept what's there.
It's kind of unnerving, isn't it?
It's very unnerving. It's very unnerving.
I think that's
It's like our society is just full of that.
Or yeah, it's really the like demonization of critical thinking.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
like I guess it, you know, I guess it's possible to be like too critical of everything, but you know, it's kind of
We'll have to live it.
yeah, kind of important to pull things out.
Oh yeah. I want to go back to what you were saying. What's your name again?
B.
B. Oh yeah, man. We go back to what you were saying about like creating paintings as a form of like pattern disruption, right? To like break out of the so-called matrix and such. Like I feel what you're saying, 'cause I think symmetry and pattern recognition are very important to like the critical thinking piece. And I worked in wilderness therapy for a long time. And, part of the deal was like, you know, nature kind of does the work, like it just allows for reflection. And I think the fact that people could see like natural angles for long periods of time, you know, like things that our ancestors were like supposed to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a great way to break out of it, you know, versus like when you got like boxes and straight symmetry that doesn't exist in nature surrounding you all the time. Of course, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to add to your brain and well-being. So.
And all of a sudden your internal world is now like reflective of like the one that you think is like all of it when you live in like a world that only exists in like, you know, straight angles, vibrant colors that are surrounded by like brands that have like hooked themselves into these like ideas of like, oh, so I'm not sponsored by Coca-Cola, refreshing. The moment I saw that syrup, yeah, I was never gonna buy it.
Exactly.
But nature, yes. So what's your name?
Riley.
Riley. I like your hat, Riley.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
It seems
Oh, definitely. Well, this is my
No, that's not right. I can say this.
It's pronounced with the silent G.
Yeah, oh, yep. No. Did you draw that yourself? That's very clean.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah, mostly musical. No.
You know what? Those do kind of look like musical notations.
There you go.
I don't know the names of them, but I mean, it looks like it could put like a note. Yes, I completely agree with what you said, Harley. That nature in itself also like disrupts that like the constant feed. Like so while they're talking, yeah. Is it recognizable now? I don't know. Okay, but you know, in hindsight,
It's looking great.
this is the first one I've done this. So in hindsight, oh wait, next time I like first off, thank you for recommending this fruit. But I'm like, oh wait, I should do a fruit that everyone knows. So that way when it starts to like form, you all already have like the notion of like what it is in your head. You can like see it in all of the stages. So, but now we know what dirty food is. So guess what? Next time, I can do it again.
Asian market pick on Twitter. There's
You know, or that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what place has them now, but probably. I don't know if they're. I don't know if it's like a seasonal thing or if they'll have a brand on it. But
Yeah. I'd say that's trip on 27th is probably the best bet.
I don't think they have like super safe. Probably. They might have like during
the hard part now is gonna be the spice, but like. What I like to put my energy towards is not, and again, yeah, my own conditioning used to call myself lazy for this. I'm like, oh, you're lazy. We're trying to find an easy way to make it look. I'm like, no, actually, no. Let's reframe. It's efficient. So currently, and I've been working on this in the background ever since I looked it up during food and I saw spice. I'm like, oh shit, how am I gonna do that? How am I gonna paint that? Like, I'm like, okay, let me get everything else first. Let me get background is the easiest, and then like the general shapes of like the fruit itself. And in the meantime, because like this part is like the value recognition and like the colors is a little bit more automated just from like practice for me. I'm like, okay, let me like work on how I can get these spikes when I get to them. Right? So the most important part is like, okay, you know, we have the shadow over here. I'm trying to keep the lighting kind of consistent so the light, you know, so I matched it over here a little bit. Which, if you can keep that consistent, it doesn't have to do that for you. So light is coming over here, which means not a whole lot of this. The spikes are going to be lit. We're going to have like the edge ones. So the way I'm going to go about it, and this is like the strategy that I've worked out while doing this, is building up the back layer because those are going to be less detailed. We don't need to be very detailed for that. However, the fun part that I always find is when you're like implying that like last little 2% of detail, like extra. So our brains sort of like like our brains like trick themselves into seeing more detail than like what actually is there. And you know, never done this before. Never seen the diary before, but I do believe I can do this. And you know, that's awesome. I did that. So first, we're gonna do value. We're gonna focus on value. We're gonna do dark. Dark means we don't have to have as much detail. Dark means it is also pushed to the background. So right now, I'm kind of like experimenting with what color would be enough to stand out from this kind of brown color that I've mixed from music like green, orange, blue. Maybe some red.
Things. Trying to think of what color is this brown, but I probably something opposite the color blue. So if it's
Oh, I'm see.
like a lighter yellow or something for what it is.
Actually, I think we need to go darker. I plan on doing the lighter yellow once we get to like the, I think you can see right here, the closer to the edge, the yellow is going to be a brighter color, and that is going to help inform the implied detail. Right now, the hardest part is getting the direction of the spikes right. And in fact, I'm also trying to, with that, I'm also trying to figure out, okay, which direction do I take the brush stroke? Because brush stroke, you know, if you start with tip, you can like kind of fan out, but also like you can start flat and then work to tip. So I'm trying to figure out which way is going to work best. And you know what? I don't know anything, so I'm just gonna like play and do that. And you know what? I'm kind of liking how this is going. And I now have the idea that I just have to keep on doing that and following the center. I've noticed that actually some of my strokes, I'm like, they're not like the exact direction I want, but these are the low stakes ones, so we actually need to get them perfect. But with that, I'm also trying to think of like, okay, this is like the literal application. I'm trying to think of what are the broader thoughts going into this. So also during this, we've been having a conversation, but I often like to think of like what the fruit means to me. This one is taking on a whole meaning right now. So this is the meaning, and this is actually new. I think we're done like a painting where the painting, the act of painting for becomes the meaning. So I think what I'm reflecting on is what I'll think when I look at this later. And by later, I mean, it could be tomorrow, it could be a year from now. And when I think about that, it sort of makes me, we were talking about critical thinking earlier. It starts to make me ask questions about myself. Questions that I don't have the answer to. Questions that I won't have the answer to until like I'm there. And then by then I have new questions. So just engaging. Okay, you know, I mean, this is something I actually love about painting. Is that each layer, each bit feels like this frame in time. It feels like you're moving through. It feels like the closest thing to seeing a fourth dimension in this. Okay, like each level of it, each layer of it, is a moment in which it exists. It's like that, like, but to painting, that's just like a second, you know, however it perceives time. You know, if an inanimate object were to perceive time, but we're just gonna. Ooh, so we have some spikes here. Yeah, I'm not even focusing too much on the direction. I'm just so getting like the implication. I just want like the general shape and direction. See, that's not there. And this is where we're going to be very specific with acrylic. Just draws quick on what this brush can sort of. We can do that. So now that I got like some implied spikes, I'm gonna try and do like that hiding of them, which it might be. It's gonna be hard to see from there, but there's some like highlighted spikes that really I think sell the texture of it. In fact, in order to get over practice, these ones are going to be easier because I said these are one two shapes. Good and bad, but noticing an issue. These are pretty light right here, and actually the background is a little bit darker. And this right here, and it's kind of a light background. If I do like spikes, they might be blend in. Contrast is important when you're surrounded by so many visuals that are high saturation, high contrast. You know, sometimes as artists, you gotta use the what do you call it? Fire if I use the things that make the brain go woo. Same things that edify is stated, but in a way that is not which is geared towards getting concept.
Speaking of high contrast, would it be okay if you continue painting and then pick up conversation on art in a little bit? But for some high contrast, there is actually a connection, and that is on Mondays. If you're looking for something to do, Parish Project, like 14th and O Street, there's art materials where one can make art. 9:30. Sometimes they'll do like an open mic where you can hear Bree. Sometimes pre-game a little bit with that at 9:30, and then at somewhere 10 to 10:30 downstairs at Duffy's on Monday nights, there's open mic comedy. And that is where you'll usually hear Bree for another set. She's also been known to be somewhat of a mentor in a comedy writing class that takes place at UNL. And there's yeah, so that's what I know. And from Omaha.
So
Yeah.
some jokes and point the people.
Yeah. Are you okay with someone behind you like telling jokes? Is that
100%.
okay? Yeah.
So I'm sure the whole this side of stuff.
Move whatever you need to.
Yeah. Now I'll take another speed. I'll see that. I'm saying there's saying that the feels a little form over this kind of thing. I'm gonna steal one of these for everybody.
Please.
Yeah. As soon as I heard someone say pardon my French, I don't know. Trouble. Try to put cigarettes off you because I can tell.
Right.
Yeah, so that is the inspiration behind the book. It's like a joke I usually open with. I did get a bunch of things stolen from me by people finding journals in my own city. So that was fun. That was a fun experience. Yeah, hello. Trying to think of what jokes I want to I think I want to try some pantry. So what's a local public figure that you guys think?
Jim Hill.
Jim Pillen? You all agree on that? Yeah? Okay. Fuck Jim Pillen. Segment over. You did it before. How do you feel about disinformation?
Not my favorite.
I think I should be in charge of it. I think I do a good job. I think I would do some good. For example, I would spread a rumor that beating your kids turns them gay. Because that would work on who it needs to. Here, have a mom. I lived with mine for a while. It was great. It's like living with the mom and Carrie, but without the happy ending.
Love it.
My mom doesn't approve of a lot of things I do. Like I got a tattoo right here. It's a spider, for those of you who can tell from the immaculate presentation. She didn't like it too much. She saw the things I knew she was gonna say. It's ugly. It's stupid. Stupid for getting it. My sister's got tattoos and she's in jail now. You know, mom stuff. And she gave me something I wasn't expecting. She tells me, and as revenge, because you like spiders so much, I'm gonna kill every spider in this. So I'm telling buddy about this, right? And he goes, you should weaponize that. So I go, yeah, you're right, you're so right. Like I should get a tattoo of her.
There you go.
She also said, why'd you have to get that ugly spider? Couldn't you get a tattoo something nice like Jesus? Apparently, based on this conversation, I was protecting him.
Yeah.
I hate when people say about tattoos in general, you know, I'm like, you're gonna age like shit because of that. It's like, dude, I drink Red Bull for the vitamins. People also say things like, it's graffiti on your body. Graffiti, I own the building. I live here. Who are you, the HOA? Just gonna tell me I have trimmed my bush? As a B12 supplement. So I don't put it in my set list, I forget to take them. A lot of people like to do sting about how their antidepressants have rendered them incapable of orgasm. The whole genre at this point, right? It's a whole thing. The antidepressants, they're working and I'm doing so well. I'm feeling fulfilled in life, but I can't finish. And presumably there's the other side of the coin. There's people that are like, the antidepressants, or I'm not all antidepressants, I'm medicated, I'm mentally ill, I'm doing so poorly, but I'm coming all over the place. That's supposed to be the dichotomy. You get one or the other. And there's me. I'm mentally ill. I'm not doing well. You people can tell. I can't come. What's the deal with that? I'm God's strongest soldier right here. What? I can't come and I want to kill myself? What am I, Jim Pillen's wife? can't stay super long. Does anyone here identify as an introvert? I used to. I also did that joke in Clear Lake, Iowa once, and a guy turned to his buddy and said, "Fuck is an introvert?" I'm sorry, pardon my lots of French. Anyway, I think that guy heard the word identify and got upset because he thought it was another gay thing. I also think that's the guy the drywall joke is for, you know? Some men can only be inside the holes they create. Yeah, I used to identify as an introvert, and I think it's just social anxiety. You know? Like I love the talk. I don't have a social battery. What I've got in my head is, am I in the lane movie? I love to talk. I'll talk forever if you let me. If I show up, it's because I have come to the conclusion that you hate me. Bye. Well, I've been doing it earlier on the place for this, so hope I didn't offend too much. Does anybody have any questions?
What is taking offense?
I don't know. It's just that it didn't. I know my tone and energy isn't really suited to this vibe. So I hate to be treated like this.
What?
I said I hate to be true.
Oh, true.
What's the most someone's been offended by?
Sometimes I end that callback joke with going, you know, I had to limit it to local people because of it. Sometimes I was getting too controversial with suggestions for, you know, someone yelled at Charlie Kirk once.
Oh,
I know what poor taste, Charles Entertainment Kirk. Probably that one. People, I don't know. People usually don't say it to my face. I mean, sometimes you get hecklers.
Maybe is there something where like you sort of feel your own, oh, that would be offensive if, or is that like a magnet or like?
You kind of just play it out, you know. I mean, there's definitely crowds where I won't do jokes about certain touchy topics. Like a lot of times, if I'm booked out in the sticks, I'm not going to do a bunch of abortion jokes, things like that. I guess I didn't do it today, but that was more of a time constraint. It's a pretty long joke.
How do jokes originate? Does it start like start at the beginning, then start at the end, then start set up the punchline, or does it like jump all around the time they come?
Kind of jumps all around. I'd say I'm generally probably I start with a lot of punchlines, but I think it varies from comedian to comedian.
Is it possible to like walk through with the process of so if you start with a punchline, is it possible to give like an example, like how you would work backwards from there to get the send?
I think with the callback jokes somewhat, because sometimes it just kind of originates with two ideas that were originally separate, that you find a way to connect and it amplifies both of them. I think that's kind of how callbacks work. And in a longer set, I have multiple callbacks. I think that's something I made a lot of progress with over time. But, also, there's also things where you have punchlines that evolve and you end up transferring to different jokes, like the drywall joke. I mean, you know, if you left one of my jokes somewhere out there, a guy punching drywall finds the stud. That concept of a guy punching the stud. And usually I deliver my jokes very differently than this. I just didn't want to do a full stand-up set in bright lighting. That's here. So, just gonna set monotonely set a bunch of my jokes to you, but and that might have been weirder, but anyway, so that concept of like a guy punching dry while finding the stud, that concept originated before that particular application of it, and I went through a few setups before finding one that I guess kind of works. I mean, it could probably be strengthened. I could probably punch out most of these. And you have things that evolve.
I just think of the like that joke or whatever, where you have like a stud finder and then you like put it up.
Oh yeah.
Not one.
Well, I mean, the joke is that he breaks his hat. It's shot for it, and you hate those guys. You want them to punch a hard surface.
Mentioned you felt intrusive in other plays. Is there a time where that worked to your benefit or bringing your actual success?
Well, I like how you just implied that it wasn't here.
Oh, well then, okay, not intentional.
Well,
It was fine, yeah.
But I think most of the time it doesn't work super well, especially in like a rule of rooms and things like that. I don't really fit the vibe, and people are kind of hostile to me. And I think comedy builds on a lot of rapport and things like that, a lot of trust with the audience. And when they out the gate don't like you and don't want to trust you and don't want to laugh at the things that you say, it just makes it unbelievable. I think the idea that funny is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you go into a comedy show thinking this is gonna suck, I don't think that this demographic is good at this, you're not gonna get the same experience and enjoyment out of this as if someone goes in like without those preconceptions. Just because of that. So in that way, I think it's if you go into a comedy show with your arms crossed and determined to hate it, you're probably gonna hate it. And the fact that there's sometimes exceptions to this, and sometimes people will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I really don't think women are funny, but you're okay." That's like the fact that sometimes it's worth the laugh out of someone doesn't change the overall probability that if
I was kind of curious how how did the journey begin, and then it seems like you found a pretty awesome community to let that grow in, and yeah, how would you?
my first set of backline, my friend kind of just dragged me to an open model and it went okay, so I kept doing it. A lot of my first mics after that were at Duffy's. It's, everyone. I don't know. I think comedy is something that gives you immediate feedback, and I think that made public speaking a lot easier for me than it was before. Is because whether it's going poorly or not, and I think a lot of the anxiety is from certainty. I feel like there's honestly, I feel like there's a comfort in knowing that it's not going well.
Do you still find like yourself anxious at all before or during, or has that like subsided quickly?
Depends on the time. I mean, I don't find myself nervous going to that, in open mic, but when it comes to shows, I get very nervous if I know the crowd's going to be hostile towards me. I also get nervous if it's going to be important. Not so much of people will always talk about crowd sizes, but I don't think that really factors in too much. It's more about like things like career opportunity. Like if I'm opening for someone who's very important, I want to impress them. But if I am doing, let's say I'm doing a set in front of 500 people, but there's not really any like career advancement opportunities. That's not honestly like not as high stakes because it's cool that you get to perform in front of 500 people, but then it's done. And if there's not really any good way where to go from there, I'm not saying it's not cool, it's fun, and I love big rooms, but it's not as nerve-wracking, I suppose. I honestly think big rooms are easier a lot of the time, just because if you have a room with hundreds of people in it, someone's going to laugh, even if you suck. But if you have a room and you have 3 people in it, those people could just not like you. And there's sometimes nothing you can do about that. Like if I walk into a room, and there are 3 people in that audience, and all of their favorite comedian is Jeff Dunn. I'm not doing anything with that. I don't have a racist puppet on me. That's just not really much room for me to go from there. Sometimes people want a very specific thing from comedy. Sometimes people think comedy is doing crowd work, which I hate. Sometimes I guess that's probably a good place to fall into that question, whatever the question was.
Yeah, I was
I don't think race is the question, but something I've noticed with comedy is it can be kind of a good way to, I guess, like encourage controversial, or I guess discussion around controversial topics. That can kind of
It can be a disarming force.
yeah.
So, I hate the phrase comedians are great philosophers because it's untrue. Comedy is an artistic and rhetorical process. It's not a philosophical one. So I think conflating that kind of gives it. I think it discourages critical engagement with it to an extent. Like, because comedians are convincing, but doesn't make them right.
Yeah.
Or doesn't make their logic sense.
Yeah, I guess sometimes I'm like, if I overanalyze something, it's like, why are you taking it so seriously? It's just a joke.
No, I get
Yeah,
that.
but it's like, well, yeah, but if it like doesn't, if it falls apart if you like.
That's the thing too. Jokes don't mean literally what they say, but they still mean something. There still is an interpretation. It's just not a direct one. So when people say it's just a joke, they don't know what they're talking about. Jokes do have a message. Like when people say, like, "Oh, it's just a joke. It doesn't mean anything." That's just wholly true.
there's 2 things that kind of been bubbling up. One, it feels like sometimes it may not be intentional, but in effect, it feels like someone's gonna find some way to approach almost anything through comedy. So sometimes things that there might not be any other way to talk about it in public, the things that are just a part of the human experience, and it's like you guys go into every nook and cranny. And then the other thing that was kind of coming to mind is like they have like that halftime at the open mic, and then it's just the improv. So it's not quite the randomness of like crowd work or whatever, but like
Exercise. And I mean, I don't mean to something around improv's also its own art form that has its own merits, but it also can be something that is good for stimulus to practice as well.
like do you can you feel with some people, or they're like, oh yeah, like improv's their thing, or like, yeah, if you prepare well like that it's awesome, or like
Some people do both. Some people do stand-up comedy and improv, but I mean, there are a ton of people who just do stand-up comedy or just do improv. There's improv games during the mic. Those are just some exercises we throw in. The improv is this whole other thing. You have short form, like that does include games like the one we played during the Duffy's fight, but also includes a lot of other games that are maybe a little too complex for every random person at a stand-up mic. And there's also a lot of long form improv as well. Where you have like teams and they do basically it's improvised comedic theater kind of is probably a reductive way of explaining it, but I don't have a better one off the top of my head. Basically, you're acting out scenes, and there's a lot of acting that goes into it. And the thing that I've struggled with long form improv, that a lot of stand-up comedians struggle with long form improv, is letting the scene play out and not just going for the joke. Because that's something that they really emphasize in improv is that you're supposed to stay in character and you're supposed to let the scene breathe and let it play out and let it come off a little more organic, I suppose, even if it's absurd, which it generally is. Yeah, no, I'd be careful not to reduce improv to a exercise for stand-ups to do. It is its own art form with a lot of people that are very committed to it. But what we do during the stand-up bikes is essentially just an improv-based exercise. And improv goes so far beyond that.
Feels like having fun is usually an intention. And then it's like the other part of in talking about maybe the things that don't get talked about, like it's sort of compassionate in effect also. That's is that ever do you think is that ever intentional? Like the compa inducing compassion, more empathy, or is that kind of just try to focus on maybe fun or
I think that's different. I mean, I think stand up and comedy in general certainly can induce empathy. I think it creates a rapport. I think it creates kind of like a shared sense of perspective. But in the same sense, there's also a lot of meanness to comedy. I think that's kind of an obvious fact. I don't think the target necessarily has to be a person. It can be ideas. It can be things that are more abstract. But
I've heard like I think Midwest self-deprecating humor or the deprecation of others, like is there a word for like non-self or other deprecating or like yourself or other? Yeah, well, like the other part, is there a name for the other part that's where there's no yeah, but where there's no roasting of others, no roasting of yourself, but it's like finding some other realm in which humor exists. Okay.
things, because those observational comedy, I think, tends to be a little more generalized. I guess it can be specific individual, but
Kind of on a situation, kind of. Okay. Okay.
Tendencies that people have, so, societal monetary doesn't have to have a specific individual target.
Is there like a magical ratio of non-deprecatory to deprecatory? Is it easier to go for self-deprecation or roasting or some other direction? Yeah.
I think it's easier to I think you get permission from the audience to be meaner if you're meaner to yourself, I guess. I think if you start off by being self-deprecating, and making fun of yourself a bit. I think that gives you a little more leniency to make fun of others or like societal trends and things like that. Because I think if people see that you don't take yourself too seriously, then you get more leeway to give that sort of commentary.
Cool.
Isn't, I don't think it's like a black person to get away with more racial jokes than a white person.
Well, that's a completely different thing.
Yeah,
That's me.
I guess just. I guess just,
Well, that's like the concept of like punching down.
yeah.
Like white people don't have as much, like justifiably so, don't have as much leeway to get away with like racial humor because of systems and like centuries of oppression, things like that. There's also a saying in comedy that you have to omit. Like the more offensive or controversial something you're about to say is, the better the joke has to be for it to land. It also depends on what you're saying about, like there are circumstances in which well, I mean, obviously, if the crowd is racist, the white person can always get away with a racist joke, unfortunately. But barring that, there are circumstances in which a joke can touch on topics of race without being racist. But that's very difficult to pull off. It's not something I would ever recommend for someone who isn't very, very familiar with what they're saying, has a lot of intention behind it, and a lot of tact, I suppose. It's not something I would ever recommend. It can be done. It often isn't done well.
Do the comedians that punch down, are they aware that they're doing it? Like,
Yeah, they're racist. They're either racist or have a wanting disregard for what they are saying and want to deny that comedy says anything at all.
The line can be, I mean, in some instances, I feel like it can maybe be confusing. I guess that's too, because that's just about racial ignorance. Well, I mean, I guess it's kind of for the person to figure out where the line is or whatever joke they want to do.
I have a joke that has, and this isn't about race, but I have a joke that tends to land well. I've never gotten any criticism on this joke, so as far as I'm concerned, I think. But so my younger brother is trans, FTM, and the joke I've made about this is that in the beginning of his transition, my brother used to wear checkered long sleeve button down shirts that he would tuck into jeans with a belt, and he would shave his blonde hair. And I said, you need to pick a different man aesthetic. You look racist. See, that is a joke about a trans person that is not transphobic. And so that's why I'm saying this. But I think even a person who holds a position of privilege can make jokes that touch on topics of oppressed groups without being bigoted. It's possible, but if you don't know what you're talking about, you're gonna make an ass of yourself, and you don't have the right to lash out when people are rightfully upset with you.
Thank you so much, Bree. And I think I mentioned that we could continue the conversation, but speaking of crossing lines, I crossed a line, and that is a 5 o'clock promise of an ending to the thing. So thanks everybody for being here, being a part of this. And I thought play could make for an interesting day. And yeah.